Now, in the Scriptures, remember the whole Bible is all about Jesus Christ, from Genesis to Revelation. And Joseph is a picture of Jesus Christ. And we see a picture of Jesus Christ in Joseph's life really throughout this chapter, in chapter 41. Just as Joseph did not glorify himself, but instead pointed Pharaoh to God, Jesus continually pointed people to the Father. He didn't seek glory for himself. Think about the Gospels. You know, Jesus just had a way of ministering to people that caused them to glorify God and not really glorify Jesus. I know Jesus is God, but they would glorify God in heaven and not Jesus. Jesus didn't receive the glory. God the Father did. Jesus would perform a miracle, and the people would glorify God in heaven. There was a way that he did it that caused people to glorify the Father. In Matthew chapter 5, verse 16, Jesus says to us, "Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven." They see what you do and they see what I do, and it causes them to glorify God. Not glorify us or praise us, but glorify God. May we do our works in such a way. May we conduct ourselves in such a way that it brings glory to our Father in heaven and not to us. Just like Joseph here. Joseph glorified the Father in heaven. I can't do it for you, but God can. And then beginning in verse 17, Pharaoh tells Joseph his dream. Pharaoh adds some additional details here, some personal commentary to his dream. Verse 17, we'll just read through it. He says, "Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, 'Behold, in my dream I stood on the bank of the river. Suddenly 7 cows came up out of the river, fine looking and fat, and they fed in the meadow. Then behold, 7 other cows came up after them, poor and very ugly,'" that's new information, "'and gaunt, such ugliness as I have never seen in all the land of Egypt,'" that's new information. "And the gaunt and ugly cows ate up the first 7. The fat cows, when they had eaten them up, no one would have known that they had eaten them, for they were just as ugly as at the beginning. So I awoke. Also I saw in my dream, and suddenly 7 heads came up on one stalk, full and good. Then behold, 7 heads, withered, thin, and blighted by the east wind, sprang up after them. And the thin heads devoured the 7 good heads. So I told this to the magicians, but there was no one who could explain it to me." Now verse 25, "Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, 'Well, the dreams of Pharaoh are one.'" It's actually just one dream. "God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do." Now notice here that God gives Joseph the interpretation immediately. The Egyptian magicians and the wise men, the Egyptian priests, they've got to go to their books and look it up in their books. But for Joseph doesn't consult any books or manuals. He doesn't go through any kind of ritual to receive the interpretation. He just has the interpretation. Now, this would be shocking to Pharaoh. This would be shocking to the magicians and the wise men that are there, that here's this Hebrew prisoner that didn't do anything to get the interpretation. He's just got the interpretation. You know, in the Gospels, we see Jesus cast out demons simply by commanding them to go. And the Jewish religious leaders at that time, when they would attempt to cast out a demon, they actually had a whole ceremony and ritual thing that they would do, and they would burn incense, and they had prayers that they would recite in an attempt to try to cast out the demons. But Jesus just cast out the demons with a command, with a word. He just said, and they were gone. No incense, no reciting rote prayers, just a spoken command, and the demons obeyed. Now, on one occasion in Mark's Gospel, when Jesus cast out a demon, listen to what it says. It says, "The people were amazed, so that they questioned among themselves, saying, 'What is this? What new teaching is this? For with authority he commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him.'" You see, the people were amazed, not just that Jesus cast out a demon, but how he cast out a demon. He just commands them. He just has authority. And I suggest to you that how Joseph received this interpretation from the Lord impacted Pharaoh and the magicians and the wise men. How God works through you impacts people. How the Holy Spirit ministers through you impacts people. You know, Jesus said, the Spirit will come upon you and you will be witnesses for me. The Spirit working in us and through us will be a witness to others of the reality of God and His power. And so it's not just that Joseph has the interpretation, it's how he has the interpretation. This impacts Pharaoh. Joseph just speaks with authority. Well, it's one dream, one message from God telling you what's going to happen. And so again, verse 25, Joseph said to Pharaoh, the dreams of Pharaoh are one. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good heads are 7 years. The dreams are one. And the 7 thin and ugly cows which came up after them are 7 years. And the 7 empty heads blighted by the east wind are 7 years of famine. This is the thing which I have spoken to Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. Do you see how he keeps pointing him to God? God is speaking to you, Pharaoh, this God that you don't know. He's speaking to you. He's telling you what he's about to do. Indeed, 7 years of great plenty will come throughout all the land of Egypt, but after them 7 years of famine will arise, and all the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine will deplete the land. So the plenty will not be known in the land because of the famine following, for it will be very severe. And the dream was repeated to Pharaoh twice because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass. God is trying to tell you what he's going to do, Pharaoh. And he gave you the 2 dreams to establish the matter. Out of the mouth of 2 witnesses, a matter is established, Deuteronomy. And he says, God's about to do this shortly. He's talking to a non-believer. Hey, God's trying to speak to you. God's trying to tell you something. God's trying to warn you of what's to come. So Joseph tells Pharaoh the interpretation. There would be 7 years of plenty and abundance, followed by 7 years of famine. The 7 years of famine will be so bad the good years will be forgotten. And that brings us to verse 33. And in verse 33, Joseph just offers some free advice to Pharaoh. He's interpreted the dream for him, and now he's just going to give him some advice now.